All right, guys, looks like we're live. Not sure about the validity of that. Um, let's see what we have here. So it is showing my live transmissions from the Frank Monday channel recently. Lunar Light Entertainment is still only at 15 subs. So if you get a chance, guys, please make sure to sub me here on Lunar Light Entertainment. Let's check the stream strength. We're looking good. There might be someone out there in Happy Land. Hey, good to see you, Jeff. How are you? Yeah. So, these nipples, I gotta get rid of these nipples, man. Let me take care of these nipples. Yeah, I'm worried, Jeff, that showing too much nipple online isn't a good idea. So, I could put about two to the friend. Fuck no. It's out, yeah. I too am worried about Odin. Let me put on a shirt so I'm not showing any nip. It's not a great idea to be going nipple dynamite on the boob tube. Susan, I don't think she approves of too much nipple. She doesn't seem like a woman that would breastfeed her children to me. Not in public, at least. And honestly, I don't think she would breastfeed. I don't think she would lactate. I think she'd probably be sterile, frigid, and what's the word I'm looking for? Um, barren. That's the word I was looking for. I would describe Susan as a sterile, frigid, and barren shrew of a sword of a horrifying banshee of a woman. Yeah, the park was wonderful, Monsieur Tidrick. It's about 45-minute drive with no traffic. With traffic, it would not be manageable really. But due to the fact that yesterday there wasn't any traffic, that was good. You're gonna have to pardon me because I am making my my kids some breakfast noodles, and so I'll be in and out. Yeah, I would definitely describe Susan as a sterile, frigid, and barren shrew of a horrifying banshee of a woman. Okay, that's not perfect. I didn't really pay attention to that. So she seems to be a most horrifying shrew of a woman. With the qualities um, would reserve for the most vile monstrosities dwelling in sewers of the abyss. Let's see if that's any better. Is that any better? She seems to be a most horrifying shrew of a woman, with the qualities one would reserve for the most vile monstrosities dwelling in the sewers of the abyss. Um, yeah, Susan's a witch. Good, well put. Very eloquent, concise, to the point. Monsieur Chidrick, she's a witch. Uh, Russian lads out there in Happy Land, good to see you, man. I'm making some noodles for my kids. I have my university shirt on today. So that's the Chinese university I attended here in Beijing. It's called Tsinghua Daxue. That's my alma mater right there, guys. Sorry, guys, I'm over here. I got a couple. I gotta give me a couple of minutes to make some noodly noodles for my kiddos. I would have brought you guys along on this noodly adventure, but my phone overheated, so now I'm broadcasting from my desktop computer. Yeah, sorry about that, guys. I got a bit of an idea here. Since I got to be away for just 2 more minutes, man. 2 more minutes. I should have done this to start with. But I wasn't thinking straight. Let's see if this will work.
It's Thursday, October 5th, 2017. This is the Hermetic Hour. I'm your host, Pope Runyon. And tonight, we air a discussion on the evolution of the solar hero in mythology. From the Sumerian Gilgamesh, who was the model for the Phoenician milk cart, who in turn inspired the Greek Hercules. Gilgamesh is a 4,000-year-old epic adventure story which circulated throughout the whole Middle East, with copies found among the Hittites and the Canaanites. And even as Ishtar and Tammuz were translated into Astarte and Baal and subsequently became Aphrodite and Adonis, Gilgamesh, like Hercules, slays a lion, a bull, a giant, and a many-headed monster, his victories and Hercules' labors are seen as representing the sun's yearly progress through the signs of the zodiac. So, tune in and we'll go back to the days of myth and legend and make our way through the circle of the beasts, as the zodiac was originally called. Now, the solar hero myth cycle is probably one of the most important mythical allegories in our esoteric tradition. The solar hero and his exploits through the signs of the zodiac represent the journey of the human soul through its continuing incarnations. The signs of the zodiac, especially those represented by animals, provide a key to interpreting this very ancient system of personal human history, both past and future. The 12 signs of the zodiac are like the 12 hours of a vast clock in the heavens, a time machine that gives us a window to view our destiny. This very ancient form of natal astrology was originally intended for kings alone, and kings in those ancient times were all thought to be related to gods. But by the 1st century of the Common Era, Hermes Trismegistus and Jesus the Nazarene revealed that all men and women are divinely ensouled. And so, this ancient solar hero mystery could be applied to those gifted with the mind, according to Hermes, or as Jesus put it, in my Father's house there are many mansions. And Jesus was also something of an elitist, although he didn't openly say that. But he was something of an elitist because he told, regarding these kind of mysteries, he told his disciples, "Don't cast your pearls before swine." One of the keys to unlock this mystery are the 4 cherubs that are so familiar to the Western tradition. The lion, Leo, the bull, Taurus, the man, Aquarius, and the eagle, representing Scorpio. They represent the 4 fixed signs of the zodiac, and they form a perfect equivalent cross if you place them on the zodiacal wheel. And we hold that the zodiac, as we know it, began with Taurus the bull at vernal equinox 22,000 years ago, long before the Great Flood. Our astrology and mythology, both pagan, Hellenic, and biblical, dates from the Second Taurian Age, which began around 4000 BC, and continued until 1800 BC, and lingered on in tradition until 332 BC, when Alexander the Great, full of Melkart, and Melkart, of course, was the Phoenician Hercules, at Phoenician Tyre, and formally ushered in the age of Aries. This is why Ptolemy, who defined our astrology, started at 0 degrees Aries.
All right.
The earliest written account of the solar hero is Gilgamesh, which was originally set forth in 5 separate stories back in ancient Sumer. Now, the subsequent Babylonian civilization combined these 5 tales into one epic adventure story, which we will summarize in a short synopsis. The epic's prelude offers a general introduction to Gilgamesh, the king of Uruk, who was 2/3 god and 1/3 man. He built magnificent ziggurats from temple towers, surrounded his city with high walls, and laid out its orchards and fields. He was physically beautiful, mentally strong, and very wise. Although Gilgamesh was godlike in body and mind, he began his kingship as a cruel despot. He lorded over his subjects, raping any woman who struck his fancy, whether she was the wife of one of his warriors or not, or the daughter of a nobleman. He accomplished his building projects with forced labor, and his exhausted subjects groaned under his oppression. The gods heard his subjects' pleas and decided to keep Gilgamesh in check by creating a wild man named Enkidu, who was as magnificent as Gilgamesh. Enkidu became Gilgamesh's great friend. And Gilgamesh's heart was shattered when Enkidu died of an illness inflicted by the gods. Gilgamesh then traveled to the edge of the world and learned about the days before the deluge and other secrets of the gods. And he recorded them on stone tablets. Now the epic begins with Enkidu. He lives with the animals, suckling at their breasts, grazing in their meadows, and drinking at their watering holes. A hunter discovers him and sends a temple prostitute into the wilderness to tame him. At that time, people considered women and sex calming forces that could domesticate wild men like Enkidu and bring them into the civilized world. And when Enkidu sleeps with a woman, the animals reject him since he's no longer one of them. Now he's part of the human world. And then the harlot teaches him everything he needs to know to be a man. Enkidu is outraged by what he hears about Gilgamesh's successes, and so he travels to Uruk to challenge him. And when he arrives, Gilgamesh is about to force his way into a bride's wedding chamber. Enkidu steps into the doorway, blocks his passage. The two men wrestle fiercely for a long time, and Gilgamesh finally prevails. And after that, they become friends and set about looking for an adventure to share. Now, Gilgamesh and Enkidu decide to steal trees from a distant cedar forest forbidden to mortals. A terrifying demon named Umbaba, the devoted servant of Enlil, the god of the earth, wind and air, guards it. The two heroes make the perilous journey to the forest, and standing side by side, they fight with the monster, with the assistance from Shamash, the sun god. The two heroes make a perilous journey to the forest, and they cut down the forbidden trees, fashion the tallest into an enormous gate, take the rest into a raft, and float it back to Uruk. And upon their return, Ishtar, the goddess of love, is overcome with lust for Gilgamesh. Gilgamesh spurns her as she's enraged, and the goddess asks her father, Anu, the god of the sky, to send the bull of heaven to punish them. The bull comes down from the sky, bringing with him 7 years of famine. Gilgamesh and Enkidu wrestle with the bull and they kill him. And, this is a prelude to Mithra, of course. The gods meet in council and agree that one of the two friends must be punished for their transgression. And they decide Enkidu is going to die. And he takes ill and he suffers immensely and shares his visions of the underworld with Gilgamesh. When he finally dies, Gilgamesh is heartbroken. Gilgamesh can't stop grieving for Enkidu, and he can't stop brooding about the prospect of his own death. And exchanging his kingly garments for animal skins as a way of mourning Enkidu, he sets off into the wilderness, determined to find Utnapishtim, the Mesopotamian Noah. After the flood, the gods had granted Utnapishtim eternal life. And Gilgamesh hopes that Utnapishtim can tell him how he might avoid death also. And Gilgamesh's journey takes him to the twin-peaked mountain called Mashu, where the sun sets into one side of the mountain at night and rises out of the other side of the mountain in the morning. And we might mention that in those days, the underworld was the overworld, because all of the sun and all the stars and planets, they set, and they went underground. From they're looking at the horizon, they went down into the underground. Utnapishtim lives beyond the mountain, but the two scorpion monsters that guard the entrance refuse Gilgamesh into the tunnel that passes through it. Gilgamesh pleads with them, and they relent. After a harrowing passage through the darkness, Gilgamesh emerges into a beautiful garden by the sea, and there he meets Saduri, a veiled tavern keeper, and tells her about his quest. And she warns him that seeking immortality is futile, and that he should be satisfied with the pleasures of this world. However, when she can't turn him away from his purpose, she directs Shanabi, the ferryman. Now, this sounds like the Charon and the River Styx and the Greek underworld. Well, you better believe it was the Greek myths, and owed a lot to Gilgamesh. Not just Hercules, but a number of the Greek myths. Urshanabi, the ferryman, takes Gilgamesh on a boat journey across the sea and through the waters of death to Utnapishtim, and Utnapishtim tells Gilgamesh the story of the flood. Now the gods met in council and decided to destroy humankind. Ea, the god of wisdom, warned Utnapishtim about the god's plans and told him how to fashion a gigantic boat. And the seed of every living creature might escape. And by the way, this original ark was in the form of a cube, and it eventually became a constellation. When the waters finally receded, the gods regretted what they had done and agreed that they would never try to destroy humankind again. Utnapishtim was rewarded with eternal life. Men would die, but humankind would continue. When Gilgamesh insists that he be allowed to live forever, Utnapishtim gives him a test. If you think you can stay alive for eternity, he says, surely you can stay awake for a week. And Gilgamesh tries, but immediately fails. And so Utnapishtim orders him to clean himself and put on his royal garments again and return to Uruk, where he belongs. Just as Gilgamesh is departing, however, Utnapishtim's wife convinces him to tell Gilgamesh about a miraculous plant that restores youth. Gilgamesh finds the plant, has to do a little pearl diving to find it, and takes it with him, planning to share it with the elders of Uruk. But a snake steals the plant one night while they are camping, while he's bathing in fresh water. The serpent slithers away, it sheds its skin and becomes young again. When Gilgamesh returns to Uruk, he is empty-handed but reconciled at last to his mortality. He knows that he can't live forever, but that humankind will. Now he sees that the city he had repudiated in his grief and terror is magnificent, enduring the achievement, the closest thing to immortality to which a mortal can aspire. And actually, we should add that when he died, he became
I didn't go anywhere.
like Osiris. He became the Lord of the Dead. Michael, let's discuss this a little bit. Some of the aspects of this that relate to
smoking.
that relate to the labors of Hercules or essentially to Melkart.
There's no understanding.
I am a little bit. I did read that article myself in preparation, but so that is a theory I'm familiar with.
Yeah, well, one of the things about that we should mention is that Gilgamesh's mother, Ninsun, who was a minor goddess, his mother really liked Enkidu and thought he would be a good influence on Gilgamesh, and so she adopted him. She formally adopted him as her son, which made him essentially Gilgamesh's brother. And in doing this, of course, would certainly be the gestation for considering Gilgamesh and Enkidu to be related to the son of Gemini. Now, consequently, if we're going to start tracing this, Gilgamesh through the zodiac, when she finally, I think that the time when she finally adopts him in the story, we're going to plot stuff. At the time when Ninsun decides to officially adopt Enkidu would indicate that Gilgamesh is in the sign of Gemini. I think that'd be reasonable, and then we can continue on. What do you think?
I would agree. I completely agree with that. It also fits when she who prophesies that Gilgamesh would love Enkidu's wife.
Yeah. I've got, as I said, I kind of abbreviated John Ebert's here, so it wouldn't, cutting out some of the more, I won't say more technical. Let's just say, it can be abbreviated. I could read some of it, but actually, seeing as how you're on, could just sort of discuss the points. What do you think Humbaba represents? What the monster that guards the forest?
So I kind of lean towards Maria Mateus's take on Humbaba. She linked Humbaba to a vegetation god that is also a god of snakes, which is really interesting, and a storm god. And in Humbaba, Gilgamesh and Enkidu are killing the fertility, which is why Gilgamesh doesn't have a child. And it's very similar to our seasonal ceremonies whenever Mot kills Baal.
Yeah, that makes pretty good sense. I think also, and I'm fascinated with the idea too that the cedar forest, that cedar forest, of course, we know it's in Lebanon, and we know it has a lot to do with mythology. And apparently, that cedar forest in those days was much more extensive. And apparently, it apparently covered and also into the upper reaches of the Tigris and Euphrates. In a way, it kind of reminds me of the European, the European forest, what we call the forest of fear. As you remember, in Europe, that oak forest in Europe, which is primarily an oak forest, it went all the way from Poland, all the way across the Channel through England and all the way into Ireland originally. And and today there's hardly anything left of it. And the reason being that the British
seems like Trump faced 2 impeachments for the Russian collusion story.
Down for wooden and house lumber, and the same thing I think applies to to the cedar forest, that forest in that went all the way from Lebanon from Lebanon all the way to Iran, probably extended. And I could see why Humbaba went into the forest, because that cedar was very valuable. They didn't have any timber down in Babylon. They had they made all their bricks. They got straw. They had straw to reinforce the bricks, but they didn't have any timber. So that was a valuable commodity, and Humbaba was the guardian. And that's what they originally, what Gilgamesh went up there to do was to take forest and go into the lumbering business, which they did. What I'd like to do, and I haven't done it yet, I did get a zodiac and put the fixed signs, the cross of the fixed signs across. What I'd like to do is to take the Gilgamesh legend and go right through it and diagram it right on the circle of the zodiac, so we could compare each sign. And as I said, John Ebert has done this in this article. He hasn't diagrammed. He doesn't actually diagram it, but what he's done is he's gone through this article and he's pretty much pegged sign for sign. Let's see, Gilgamesh's solar journey through the 12 signs of the sun's annual passage through the year. We are moving toward the ecliptic from Taurus to Gemini to Cancer to Leo. Remember, though, that this was with regard to the precession of the equinoxes. The progression moves back away, in effect, from the age of Gemini to Taurus, and from the age of Taurus, 4,000 BC, to the age of Aries, known to the Mesopotamians, however, as the day labor. Now, this is one thing that Ebert says. He says he couldn't find Aries in the Gilgamesh story, which is understandable because they were very much in the age of Taurus when they did this thing. They consequently they wouldn't be concerned so much in getting into Aries.
So I'll go ahead and jump in real quick. And as you keeper, I'll work with Maria Mateus. Her argument is that you find Enkidu being domesticated entering the city because the day laborer was representative of the shepherds and all the hired help that would come into the city from the outside. So Enkidu coming into existence is Aries.
Well, that works, yeah. The Garden of Jewels, precious stones, at the point along the ecliptic between Scorpio and Sagittarius, there's an opening to the Milky Way. And so it's possible that this tunnel leads them down to the celestial underworld, where Gilgamesh will find this very river that will take him to the domain of Vishnu, where here he leaves behind the constellations of the northern hemisphere, for, as the text says, he took the path of the sun god, meaning that he followed the ecliptic as it led him down into the southern celestial hemisphere. Now, this is a point I want to bring two things up. We know that the ancients believed, and here again, this is another opposition on the zodiacal wheel, that Cancer was the gate of men. That was the gate that you came down when you came back down or came back up, because and the underworld, eventually became the overworld. The two were virtually interchangeable. When you came back down or came back up, you went through the gate of Cancer, the gate of men, and then you were. If it was your first time around, you were born in Leo. If it was your first time around the wheel, but if you came back up through Cancer, as I said, then you would circle around, and it was the next. If it was your next time, you'd circle around and you'd probably come up through Gemini. The gate of the gods, the god that you went out was all the way around on the other side of the zodiac, and that was Capricorn. And so we, in a way, we have to kind of plot this thing, to plot this using the equivalent cross of the fixed signs and the gate of the gods and the gate of men. That's kind of the key to to defining the circle of the beasts, so to speak. Now, the Milky Way river of souls, and I think we should explain at this point. We should explain this overworld underworld thing, because I'm sure that there are listeners who. We've discussed it before, but I'm sure there are listeners that don't understand quite what we're talking about here. Do you remember the planets were way back in Sumerian times? The planets were considered evil. They were bad. Evil ones, sowers of ills, born in the bowels of the hills, And they were called the Maskim. And the reason is that they came up. If you looked at the horizon and you were a stargazing shaman in those days, and you looked at the horizon, you saw these wanderers come up over the horizon, and they didn't like the stars. They moved around where the stars were more or less fixed, and these planets actually shifted around, and this is why they were referred to as the doesn't get it from Noah, but he gets it out of his wife to go somewhere near Dillman, the Persian Gulf, and go pearl diving for this plant. Now, it's been pointed out. I think Ebert pointed it out. Someone pointed out that Gilgamesh dives for this plant. This plant of immortality, which grows underwater. He dives for it in exactly the same manner that the pearl divers down in Dillman, and they still do, by the way. Basically, they use a rock as an anchor, and they just let the rock pull them down. Hopefully they hyperventilate before they do this, and they let the rock pull them down, to the bottom, which could be 100 feet or more. And then they grab, they get the oysters, grab the pearls, and bring them up. And of course, they're the same damn thing in the South Pacific, exactly. And it's very dangerous. And they a lot of them die or get lung disease, one thing or another. But this is what Gilgamesh does. He hits the plant, he brings it up. And then he goes and finds a freshwater spring after he comes up out of the sea. He finds a freshwater spring, puts the plant down, and goes to wash himself off, wash off the salt water. And this snake comes by and grabs this plant and eats it, and then sheds his skin, and off the snake goes. This is kind of like, in a way, Hercules goes for the apples, for the golden apples in Hesperides. And of course, those golden apples are like the fruit of the tree of life in the Bible. And so much of all this, Gilgamesh and Noah and Hercules, all of this shows up in the Bible. We have a lot of exchange in the Bible. What do you think about the final labor? Do you think that Gilgamesh bringing up the plant and losing it? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, I do. I think that the water snake, and this is a little bit graphic, but it's fertilizing. So when it takes the plant, it's kind of indicating that the only immortality is through reproduction in that sense, as far as physical immortality. I think
that is a good solution to that problem. And also, Gilgamesh, this whole idea of finding something that for immortality, I think the immortality that Gilgamesh eventually,